hi there.
That's a good way to start.
we should start like that.
Double check the settings here. We're all good. Okay.
Oh, hi there, bud.
Oh, hi there. How are you today, now?
Oh, you know. Everything's going alright.
Out for a rip, are you, bud?
Oh, yeah, I was out for a rip earlier and the sun was shining and it's melting all the snow. I was a little worried I wouldn't be able to go sledding later, but we'll see.
Well, if you can't sled down that big hill, you'll be late for the hockey game, right?
I know, right, eh?
So. Should have said that just as I got all that cake in my mouth. It is the 15th of February.
Yep.
Day after Valentine's Day. 1:23 p.m.
1:23.
Monday. And as you might have noticed from the preamble, we talked last time on Saturday. We talked about England and the UK, and you thought afterwards it would be a good idea to talk about something that you have a bit more experience with, and
we both relate to.
and this is Canada.
Yes.
So what would you like to say about Canada, buddy?
So Canada's cool. We both lived here for.
Were you born in Canada?
I was born in Montreal. So I was born in Montreal, and then I lived in the States for a while until I was about 6 years old, and then I came back and moved to Canada. I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I came back and moved to Canada.
I was also born in Canada.
Yes.
I was born in Toronto General. Not too far from here.
Very nice.
Originally, my mother was planning on having a home birth. And by originally, I mean before she was pregnant with me. And then she spent almost all of her pregnancy violently ill. Because apparently being pregnant didn't agree with her very much. And in retrospect, apparently she was ill when she had my brother too, but apparently it was even worse when it was me. So.
Oh no! So she decided to go to the hospital route.
Yeah, so they'd already made that call months before, and I think she may have already been at the hospital when she went into labor. I can't remember. Nice. But yeah, I was born in Toronto General. Alright, buddy, pick up the lead.
Yeah.
Or you came back to Canada at 6?
Yeah, I was about, I think I was like, I might have been younger actually, because I think we came back 97, so I was about 4, maybe 4.5, maybe almost 5, yeah, and basically, yeah, we came back, and we stayed at Massey College. My parents they had just come from Notre Dame, so they got a job teaching at University of Toronto. We originally lived in Massey College, which was one of the buildings at University of College, a fellowship for graduate students, but also they had rooms for professor, and I was the youngest person there living there. I think at that time I was about 5 years old, and then after that we moved. We stayed there for a couple of years, and my folks bought a house up at St. Clair and Bathurst area, a little north of there. So in the kind of the northwest part of Toronto.
When was that?
They got that in 99, maybe 2000, 99, 2000. No, I think 99 they got it, summer of 99. And then I started going to school at a local school called Humewood.
Humewood, eh?
Yeah. And that was just down the street, so that was nice. How about you, man? Did you... So you're born here. Then what happened after that?
I was born here, and my parents lived in Toronto for a couple of years, and then my mother was finishing up her. I can't remember if it was just her graduate study or her postgrad or whatever it was. And she got a job at Manchester, University of Manchester, because of course she's English.
Mm-hmm.
So then the whole family picked up and headed out to Manchester.
Right.
When I was 2.
Mm.
So this would be in 96.
Okay.
And we didn't settle in Manchester itself. We stayed for a couple of years at a little house outside of Manchester in a town called Whaley Bridge. And then we eventually bought a house there.
Nice.
And then I don't get back to Canada. I'm in England for the next 6 years.
Right.
And then I'm in the U.S. for the next 4 years after that. So I don't actually get back to Canada until 2006.
Right. So you're about like 12 years old.
Yeah, when my parents break up and and my mother stays in Philadelphia where she still is.
Right.
And me, my dad, and my brother all came up here to Toronto.
Right. Right.
So fill me into sort of until you were kind of 12, buddy. What was going on in Canada for you?
I was here. So I was in Toronto and I lived at the same place.
Crazy.
Yeah, which is crazy.
People do that, huh?
People do that. Yeah, people don't. Yeah, you know, and it was weird because I'd moved around a bunch when I was younger, like really young. But for kind of, you know, that period until I was about, you know, 6 to maybe 20, my folks stayed at that spot. And you know, when I was going through that, I did 2 years of public school, and then my folks decided to try homeschooling with me when I was about 8. Mm-hmm. And so from about grade 3 roughly to grade 9, I was homeschooled, and then in grade 9, 2008, I went to the Abelard school. But so I was just kind of growing up in Toronto at that point. You know.
What was homeschool like?
Homeschool was kind of cool, you know. I had some teachers. I had my folks teach me. Sometimes they got tutors as well to come teach me. And then as well, you know, we also had like a homeschooling group of kids that were all homeschooled together, but we'd all like meet up once a week.
How'd your parents find that?
They just kind of got plugged into the network. They did some research and they found like the one, it was in the West End. It was called Waller-Semerson Community Center. And that's where they just like, all the homeschooling parents just came and like dumped their kids like for 4 hours. And it was a big gym. It was like a big gym. They had like toys there, I remember. It was where like the kind of homeschooling community that I guess was, you know, fairly close to where my parents lived, was getting where they could just hang out and get connected with each other. So that was kind of cool. Yeah.
So would your parents be there too, or?
Yeah, my mom would be there. I remember my mom would come with me, and she'd stay there. And then she got to meet like someone she went to high school with that she hadn't seen in like 30 years. And so reconnected with her, and her daughter, who's now a son, but her daughter at the time was he was homeschooled as well there, which was pretty cool. And then that's how I met a bunch of my friends, and then, you know, my homeschooling friends. And then later on, what we do is we would go to different parents' houses to learn from the different parents. So I remember my dad taught Latin for a while.
Yeah, of
he
course.
taught Latin for a while, which was really fun, carrying on that tradition in the family. And then my one of my friend's moms, she taught history and kind of a bit of math and stuff like that. And then we also, as a group, we had something called History Club that came out of us just meeting at the gymnasium, where we actually sat down and we all, like the parents all hired like a teacher to teach us history. We had drama club and stuff like that. So it was kind of interesting. Yeah, it was fun.
A bit of a hodgepodge.
Yeah, a bit of a hodgepodge, but you know, made sure sort of it wasn't exactly like, I think when a lot of people think about homeschooling, they think about deschooling, which is when there's like no structure and the kids can kind of just do whatever they want, or they think about you know, very fundamentalist Christianized kind of homeschooling, where you basically have, you know, Bible approved textbooks about science and things like that. and those do exist, but I was very fortunate that neither of those were kind of my upbringing, you know.
Between those two extremes.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where I was at in Toronto while you were away. And then 2006, we're both like 11, 12 years old. Could you fill in from the time you were that age to when you came to the Abelard school a little bit?
Sure. So I showed up Yeah, in 06. And we bought a house almost immediately at 52 Tiverton, which is just around the corner from here, and just moved out of the family. My father just sold it at the end of last year, at the end of 2020. And we got into that house, and it needed a ton of work done on it. So originally we sort of moved into 2.5 rooms on the main floor.
Right.
And then we were having all the insulation torn out. So we like lived behind like a wall of plastic. Because the main parts of the entire rest of the house was like sealed off to us from plastic, and then we'd just be there in what was after that the living room and dining room,
right?
The 2 rooms on the front left of the house,
right?
That you will vaguely remember,
right?
And we had like, I can't remember. I think we had somehow like 3 beds. It might have been 2 beds, and me and my brother were in a big double together. Yeah. But that was like the whole space. We had a microwave in the corner on a desk. And we didn't exactly eat like kings for that early bit. And so that was my those were sort of the like foundational moments in my memories of Toronto. The only thing that was before that maybe was when we very first showed up. We stayed maybe for no much longer than a week with Leslie and Richard, friends of my father's who live around the corner from 52 Tiverton. And Leslie, who I just did a bunch of tutoring for, is still very close with my dad. So that and who I think they met at CBC many years ago.
Oh, when he was working there,
We'll touch on that stuff later. So that's my sort of like early Toronto memories. I shifted into that new place, and then I started going to school at Queen Alexandria, which is the public middle around the corner there.
Right.
And had a bit of a rough time adapting to a very different school and a very different place than where I had come from out of Philadelphia on the main line. Which is funny because I'll call the main line Philadelphia. The main line is definitely the suburbs. And as you know, I'm pretty territorial about what qualifies as Toronto over here.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's that funny that little piece of irony there.
So you went to the same school in Philadelphia that Kobe went to, right?
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, man, that's exciting.
No, the Lower Merion. I believe he went to both of those schools.
He went to both of those schools.
And Lower Merion High School and Lower Merion Middle School. They're like right beside each other. There's like a patch of grass in between them.
Wow.
And they share that field for different things. And,
that's really cool.
And those were like just some of the richest schools in the world.
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, for sure.
Certainly for middle schools and high schools, probably some of the richest public schools on the face of the earth.
Absolutely.
Because in wealthy American neighborhoods where this is a different topic entirely, but basically your neighborhood funds your schools.
Yeah,
in America.
Exactly.
So poor neighborhoods have shitty schools, and rich neighborhoods have amazing schools.
And these schools are still public because they're funded by all that suburban tax money. Absolutely.
So we won't get too deep into that. But yeah, so that had been my experience shortly before that,
right.
And then there was a gap just before that when me and my parents were in Rome,
right?
Which is basically, to my knowledge, where their whole relationship fell apart, and everything ended up slicing in half, and the move to Toronto occurred. But that is my only experience being homeschooled, which is why.
Okay, in that period,
there's a sort of a 2-month period there where my dad's having me try and do a certain amount of schoolwork each day, essentially.
Nice,
Mixed results.
Yeah, no, totally.
It's a very different thing. But I think at the time I would have been more suspicious of homeschooling, but these days, I actually tutor kids, and to a certain extent, I think there's relatively little that I learned in those first 12 years or whatever it is anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Up until kind of the beginning of high school.
Yeah.
So things speed up a little bit.
For high school, you didn't jump into. You came in grade 9.
Before we get to high school, actually no. Let's do high school.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So you jumped in, but you didn't jump in at the beginning of grade 9, like most of the class of 2008, or no, just like the beginning. Just the most of the class of 2008 that we all grew up with in high school together. You came in a little later.
Yes, oft forgotten fact as the years got deeper that I missed the first semester.
Yes, exactly.
Three semesters at Abelard.
Yeah.
And that was because I had gone instead to Riverdale.
Right.
And this is probably where we each tell our Finding Abelard stories.
Yeah, man.
Everybody has to find it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't been doing that great at middle school.
Yeah.
I was never that focused on school or studying.
Yeah.
And until perhaps sort of my last couple of years of university.
Yeah.
So still a ways to go until then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So not that focused on school and university. I'm at so I ended up going to Riverdale.
Right.
RCI, Riverdale Collegiate.
Right.
Which you've been past several times now. It's just over there.
Just over there, yeah.
It's nice because you kind of have a real visceral response to a lot of these places now. And academically, I didn't do well there at all.
Yeah.
I failed some classes and wasn't engaged, and got in trouble with it was technically the vice principal there. They have 4 vice principals there. It was a giant school. It was 2,000 kids. Mm-hmm. So they have 4 VPs and like a one principal. So a very, very different place from Abelard, which had about 50 kids. So I got in a fight at some point. I don't think I ever got suspended.
No.
But I got a bunch of detentions, and I got detentions for not doing homework, and this, that, and the other thing, and I wasn't really too aware at the time that my parents were kind of freaking out behind the scenes. I remember, it's funny, this is a memory from a long time ago, but the summer before I went to high school.
Yeah.
I remember we went up north to the river to visit some family, including cousin Robin. And he's the one who's these days totally on top of the family farm. I think there might have been an uncle or two alive at that point. I think Uncle King might have still... I can't remember exactly when Uncle King passed. But... He has the farm, and then he has at least one other place sort of out not too far from it.
Yeah.
Nice sort of cottagey thing, and he was letting us stay there.
Oh, nice.
And we were staying there and just sort of having a nice time, and this must have been in the time when Dad was with Jennifer as well. I think the dog might have been there as well. Oh man, I can't remember. Or maybe no. I'm pretty sure this one was just me, Dad, and the Hills, which was pretty rare. But I remember staying up and talking to Robin and Dad, and chatting, sort of on the last night. He'd come to visit before we left. And they were talking about sort of their experiences with high school and how awful it was. And so I know it's funny that conversation sort of sticks out to me. It's a very distinctive room with this sort of sort of wooden paneling, this wooden cottage.
And it was happening, just a couple months before you were gonna go.
Yeah, if that.
To high school.
That was part of the reason why it was.
Yeah, super super topical.
Relevant. So then I get there, and clearly things aren't working, and apparently my parents are totally freaking out in the background. But at the same time, Dad was definitely with Jennifer at the time because her eldest kid, that's embarrassing, Emma, had attended for a short period the Abelard school, basically in that sort of first semester. You may even very vaguely remember her, but she would have been like a grade above you or two, and then instantly disappeared.
I seem to remember something about that. Yeah.
So she was my father's girlfriend's daughter.
Right. Couple years older than you.
A couple years older than me. And based on the report from her, like it wasn't the place for her, and she didn't. Like, that's why she didn't stay.
Right.
But when my parents were looking for a place to put me, because they didn't feel like they wanted me to be in Riverdale any longer.
Right.
They didn't feel like that situation was working out. The Abelard was in the consciousness.
Yeah.
I think my mother even saw it or something, visited. But that's kind of... they just unilaterally pulled me. I think there was a small break between the two semesters, and they're like, "Yeah, we think you're going to this school now."
No, totally.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever."
We're glad you did come through, man.
One day I was there, one day I wasn't.
I wouldn't have met you if you didn't come through. So there we go.
It's true.
So
hit me with your lead up to the Lord.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I've been homeschooling for 5 years. So I'm not used to exactly a big school. Like the last time I was in public school, I was 7 or 8 years old for last bit of grade 2. So, my parents, wanted me to find, they're also...
Is there any particular reason why they pulled you, or are they just like, it's not working out?
I was I was weird. I had, they really weren't happy with the way the school was going. Like, and they wanted to try something new. Like my grade 1 teacher was great. My grade 2 teacher was abysmal, and they had kind of investigated, into that school. They were like, okay, none of the teachers are going forward are going to be that great until like grade 6. And to answer the question of why not just go to another school, they wanted to try something different. I think so. They just kind of
there wasn't like a particular incident or anything.
No, not a particular. Just like a really rough year with a pretty abysmal teacher,
right.
A grade 2 teacher.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So they were like, we're gonna do something different, and then let's see. Yeah. So anyway, so I haven't been like in a normal school situation for a long time. Since when I was like a kid to a teenager. And I'm 14, I think, at this point. And my parents start looking around at schools. So I, because I was like, I want to go to high school. Like I'm done with homeschooling. I want to have a high school experience,
You're watching High School Musical, like.
It's like I really want to, and I also felt like in my head, like, oh man, I don't want to be one of those homeschooling kids that like, just doesn't go through high school. I want to actually have a high school experience.
How do homeschoolers get to university? Do you know?
They go and then they attend university.
But so how?
They get a GED.
Oh, they
get a GED, and then they go.
And GEDs are graded, I suppose. So.
Yep. Huh. Yeah, so then you can go. Like, I've known homeschoolers who've gone all the way up to university, and they just didn't go to school until they got there. You do have to kind of be really consistent. Like, the government checks in every year on you, make sure you're covering your subject. Yeah, exactly. And I was doing fine with that because my school, my education was actually an education. For other kids, that was a bit of an issue later on. But anyway, we'll leave that aside. But that's the other thing is my folks, were looking for something small that wouldn't be too crazy for me to go into. Also, that was going to be academic as well. They were really, really concerned about academics. Being academics, it kind of made sense. So we went around, and then I remember the first time I went to Abelard, I really liked it. I took a test because they had that entry-level test. So I did that.
The preset.
Exactly, the preset. I met Mr. Syed, our math teacher. I sat in on one of those math tests and what they were doing.
That's funny.
That was fun. And then I met Alex Berchuli there, and he was doing the Soldier Boy dance, and I just, I did the Soldier Boy dance with him, and that was it, man. And then we were like, okay, we're gonna go here now.
We found the most academic institution around.
Exactly. So
I remember my day visit too. Because my grades were so poor, I needed to do well on the preset in order for them to really consider me. But I did well on the preset.
You did well on the preset. You're a smart guy, man. So.
And I sat in, because of course that would be during the first semester.
Yeah.
And I sat in on one of your English classes.
With Mr. Young at that time.
With
right?
Mr. Young. And saw you guys all in action for the first time.
Yeah, man. And then the next semester you came through.
Yeah, exactly.
That was fun.
I remember I was wearing jeans and everybody's like,
whoa, jeans. I haven't seen those in months.
Crazy. How are you wearing jeans in the Abelard?
Yeah, it was a fun time. And, I think high school is... I don't know if we want to talk about it now or if we want to save that for another episode. It's up to you.
We can touch on it.
We can touch on it, yeah, because there's a lot there. That's where we really bonded. I have fond memories of you, Ben, and myself hanging out, in particular in grade 11 and 12, and we'd go get pizza together and hang out,
Yeah, man, after school, before you went to karate.
Exactly, before I went to karate. And at that point, it was, I did a fitness class at the JCC. So it was like a teen fitness class. So it was like teaching you how to weightlift properly and stuff like that. So that was fun. I was eating like healthy before that, getting a slice of pizza with all you guys. Yeah, I remember some other fun things we did was, if it's okay, I'd like to just go through kind of some of the highlights with you, like what you remember, what I remember.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, so one thing I remember that was really fun was Nuit Blanche. We did Nuit Blanche one year.
Yep, that was really good.
And that was really fun. And we went with Eli out late at night, and we went and slept over back at his place. And then you got up and made an omelet.
No, you're misremembering.
Oh, what happened?
I got up and tried to make an omelet. And his mother was like paranoid around people using the gas stove for some reason.
Oh,
okay. So she made
made you an omelet. Okay, that's what. Because I remember waking up and hear you talking to her and you're having some kind of discussion.
Then I had an omelet. Yeah.
And then you had an omelet.
No, it was funny. He was a great dude, and the omelet was not as good as I would have made, but
that's okay.
I'm sure his mother is lovely too.
Yeah.
No, it was funny. She was just like really paranoid about me using the gas stove, and she was like, and I was trying to explain that I had one at home and I've been using it for years now.
Yeah.
And gosh, we've had a lot of gas stoves.
Yeah.
But no, she wanted to make me an omelet. Naturally, you're in a new place. You're just like, sure, lady, you want to make me an omelet? Go for it. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So yeah, you woke up and there I was with an omelet.
Yeah, and then I think she made me an omelet too, if I remember.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it was just a hospitality thing.
Yeah, and people like to make their own thing, but that was fun.
Just paranoid about having a 15-year-old using their gas stove.
Totally. Do you remember anything else? Anything else stand out for you? I mean, probably a lot of things do, but something that comes to mind right now.
Yeah, there are a lot of good memories about those years. I do certainly to try and start bringing us back towards our general topic.
Yes.
It was definitely in that period that I started to learn much more about Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And to move around Toronto and to get an idea of different parts of the town, because we were straight slap down in just south of U of T there.
Exactly.
Like in the middle of the city. So, on lunch breaks and things, we'd move around and walk around. And afterwards, of course, we'd go to grab pizza and do things like that. And and I'm sure it's like this for many people, but high school was the first time where I started to get the real shape of that part of the city.
Yeah.
And start putting different things on the map and to start tying different places in the city together.
Definitely.
definitely in middle school, like obviously I knew this immediate area.
Right.
But honestly, I hadn't even been up Pape when I basically until I came and lived in this place now.
Right.
Because you sort of went where you needed to go. I knew the line to school very well.
Yeah, exactly.
I took the transit there for a while, and then at a certain point, I just rode the bike every day.
Yeah.
Unless it was too wintry.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I have a lot of good memories about sort of exploring Toronto for the first time and going to the Eden Centre. And
yeah, man. Kensington Market.
Kensington Markets. Yeah, we go to Kensington's all the time.
Yeah, man.
Chinatown. Yeah. So certainly those memories and those places and that location are all tied really closely together for me. Even just wandering through U of T, going on our like funky little field trips.
Oh, and Mr. Young, that's right.
Or whoever it was.
Yeah.
I remember at a certain point we just went to the U of T and like looked to the library and then came back.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I remember Mr. Young went with us and showed us the War Memorial.
I remember that one too.
That was really nice.
You read a poem or something?
They have
Flanders Fields.
In Flanders Fields is up there where the poppies grow, chiseled on the rock there. Yeah, so we read that, and I think that was when we were talking about World War I. Yeah, but Toronto is really interesting because in the same way, that's where I really started to figure out and kind of get an idea of starting to get an idea of the geography of the city itself. And Toronto is fascinating, and I learned a lot more about Toronto actually not having lived here for a while and then coming back. I think I have a better understanding of the city than I did there, and for a lot of reasons, but
totally.
Definitely. One of the things that's special about Toronto is in many ways unlike a lot of the rest of Canada. It's very different.
You're tying it in, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's segue into this through a natural route, which is, as you just insinuated, after high school. We go our separate ways.
Yeah, exactly.
You go to Oberlin.
That's right.
Ohio.
In Ohio, yeah.
In the U.S., and I go to the University of Guelph.
Right.
In Guelph.
Yes.
In Canada.
In Canada, yeah. Guelph, Ontario.
So I get sort of a taste of small town Ontario.
Yep.
And you get a taste of small town Ohio.
Oh yeah. Oh. Exactly, man. Exactly.
Very different, but in some ways similar. So, yeah, sorry. What were you going into again?
Oh, no, so, I think one of the things that, as we both experienced, it's an amazing experience.
Oh, yes, the difference of Toronto.
Yeah.
It tied in.
Definitely.
I knew it tied in.
One of the things, that Toronto has going for it that a lot of cities don't, especially cities in the States, but also in Canada too, is transportation system. You can hop on the subway or a bus and go pretty much anywhere in the city,
Yeah, no, the American transportation is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
And then the smaller cities outside of Toronto in Ontario are often pretty crap themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So you experienced that in Guelph, right? I remember you talking about having
the transit was abysmal.
Yeah.
I could not for the life of me get used to bus schedules where the buses were like half an hour apart.
Yeah.
Like they would have prime time, because in Toronto, you were never in that much of a rush to catch the streetcar.
Yes.
To be brutally honest.
Definitely.
You showed up at the stop, and also in those days, I do not remember checking to see when they came.
Right.
I don't know, like now we have all this funky phone tech. I don't know if it just wasn't available. But you just showed up at the stop, and then 10 minutes or so later, something would show up, and if it was longer than 10 minutes, you're like, what the fuck's going on?
Right. No, exactly.
I'm waiting here. But that, that's fine on a system where you're on a main line and things are running every 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But in Guelph, everything going anywhere was on like a half an hour block.
Yeah.
Unless you were on like one of these like special routes during particular times.
Yeah.
Where they were all like, we got to get these kids to school, basically.
Definitely.
There were these sort of windows at the beginning of the day where all of a sudden they would run the buses 10 minutes for a little bit. And even then it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the buses messed up. Buses are just generally miserable, and the worst thing is not only would the buses mess up, sometimes they wouldn't come, but they would just be packed.
Yeah.
You know, they would, because most of the time, to be fair, you don't need that many people on the bus.
Totally.
But in the mornings, you know, you just pack a bus full of students. They would put on a sign, and they wouldn't let pick up anyone else, and they would just drive off. And it's like, dude. Yeah, it's like a half an hour walk to school. And for a lot of the time in Guelph, I just get cranky and just walk. But a lot of the time I would, you know, sleep in or something. And
miss a class. Totally, man.
Then I'd have to get up and grab a bus.
Yeah.
But whenever I could, I would try and walk because it's just so miserable taking transit.
Absolutely. Did you find as well, like one of the things I noticed when I was, you know, in small town Ohio and I didn't have a car, you know?
Yeah, of course, but neither of us did.
Neither of us had a car, right? That's made a big difference. Is I just, you know, I got kind of depressed, especially during the winter months, and you know, because there's only so far you can walk before the endless maze of cornfields starts to press in on you, and you got to turn around and go back to your dormitory.
Yeah, I mean, in Guelph, it was just sort of subdivision looking thing. Subdivision.
Yeah.
And certainly where I was there in my first place, partly it was there's nowhere to walk. Partly it's, you know, what are you gonna walk to?
Yeah.
You know, like it was. I learned really quickly in the summer where all the nice things were nearby that I could walk to.
Definitely.
And they were far.
Yeah. You
know, you're walking like a half a kilometer to get to a little field that's not very interesting in the first place. Doing that exact same slog in the winter, when things are freezing and nasty, and your reward is like just this like shitty little frozen field. You know, if it was right beside you, then you could stroll out, you could do a lap, you could come back, and you'd be like, it's not so bad. But you know, the that sort of stuff is there were places that were nice.
Totally.
They were almost entirely just associated with the university.
Right.
So the university has a very cool arboretum.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of different trees, and it's basically just a nice park. And you know, to be fair, it's a really nice park. I mean, it's big and there's tons of space.
Right.
But it's not so big that, you know, you didn't get to know it really well.
Right.
Like I used to, when I moved into my second place with my then girlfriend.
Right.
We used to walk to school, and we'd walk up an awful road.
Yeah.
And then duck into an arboretum, and
totally.
that would mean that about half of the 45-minute walk was nice.
That's really nice. Yeah.
So there was good stuff like that. Again, you know, is the distance. Guelph in just basic terms is just like I can understand how the like founders, because there's like a river there, so there's reasons for them to set it up there. But Southern Ontario is pretty freaking flat.
Yeah.
So they've set up the whole city and it's like on either sides of like a big dip.
Yeah.
So if you're a car, you might not even know that there's a dip there. But if you're a human or a cyclist, you know, you have to cycle up and down in order to get between the college and the downtown.
Yeah.
And it was just awful.
Talk about a town gown divide for real, man.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing with these kind of you know, university towns, if it's fair to call Guelph a university town. Oberlin certainly was a college town. Like there were 8,000 people in the town and 3,000 students. So it's a town of 11,000 people.
Only 3K at Oberlin. Right?
Yeah, only 3K.
So there's like 20,000 undergraduates at Guelph.
Yeah, 20,000. So. And Guelph's probably a larger city, but
it's about a fifth the population of Guelph.
Right, yeah, but still, it's you know,
huge chunk,
a huge chunk, and just like with Oberlin, it's about a third, or you know, maybe a fourth of the total number of people there. Access to university is huge, and this was something access and who has access to the amenities of the university or the college institution is a huge kind of local political topic. Definitely was in Oberlin, probably is in Guelph to some degree too. In Oberlin, because it was just so small, it was very noticeable. And one of the big things for us was that Oberlin had a policy where if you weren't a student during certain hours, they would like kick you out of the town square and stuff like that, which was called Tappan Square. And there was a huge amount of pushback from the students for that, you know, the campus security would come and like kick homeless people out and move them along and stuff like that. So Oberlin students weren't happy about that, and the town wasn't really happy about that.
So if you weren't a student and you weren't allowed in the town square after a certain point?
Yeah, at a certain point. And also like if you look suspicious and just you look like you shouldn't be there, you know what I mean? They'd come and kind of harass you and kick you off. Weird. Yeah, it was super weird. Yeah, there's a bunch of strange things, but I guess like the kind of, you know, think about for me is this sort of divide between the town and the college was something that was really not visible in a place like Toronto where we were growing up, where the university is smack dab in the middle of this giant city. And, you know, obviously students come and students go, but people are intermixing with each other, and students are going to places, you know, by and large, where Toronto citizens are going to places, and there isn't a very
for something like U of T,
divide.
the division between students and not students is pretty shallow.
Yeah, exactly. So coming back here, that was something I remarked around a lot, was just how stratified Oberlin was in comparison to Toronto, which is very homogenous in a lot of ways.
Totally, you know? And partly, and one of the basic aspects of that is, of course, the you know, students are visually fairly distinctive, just due to age.
Yep.
But other factors in there as well, socioeconomic factors.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of young guys running around the town. Like in Guelph, if you saw a bunch of young dudes wandering together, you would basically always assume they were students.
Right.
Unless it wasn't school time.
Exactly.
Yeah, so after all that, I'm not sure we've talked about sort of growing up and all this other stuff. I'm not sure we've actually really talked about Canada yet.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll leave Canada for
another
another
day. We could leave
day.
another one. This one was like our growing, you know, we started on the Cup of Canada, which was how we kind of interacted with Canada growing up, and then we got to the point where we want to just talk about each other's lives and stuff like that growing up. So I think that's cool.
So I guess in that case, the natural place to take this for the last little bit is, you do your time at Oberlin, I do my time at Guelph.
Yeah.
We have very different relationships with the schools. I think again, you know, how university went down is a topic we can delve way deeper into.
Yeah.
After that, you end up in New York.
Yes. Yeah.
For 2 years.
Yeah, about a year and a half, a little under a year and a half. But the process was almost 2 years of moving there and then coming back here.
With mixed results, but
yeah, with mixed results. But yeah, we can cover that a little bit. Like, and you were living in Guelph at this time.
Yes,
still, right?
Exactly. And I first went to Guelph for theoretical physics, and then I flunked out of that in my second semester and switched into psychology. Psychology, brain and cognition, which is different from the regular psychology program there, only in as much as that it's a Bachelor of Science.
Okay, nice.
So I'm still sort of holding on to something scientific, mainly.
Right.
And that adds an extra year or whatever onto my program, because there's some courses that carry over and there's some that really don't. And I failed a bunch of classes anyway, so that turns that into a 5-year degree.
Right.
And then I spend an additional year in Guelph because I have a then girlfriend who I break up with and then get back together with and then break up with later. But
that's how it goes sometimes, bro. Yeah, man. It's always a little messy.
But basically we break up and then I come back to Toronto.
And that's where I met you back. Was like kind of we're pretty fresh and new.
Yeah, I can't remember. I probably sent you a Facebook message or.
Well, what happened was I saw you because I was eating lunch with my mom in a Japanese restaurant on Bloor Street. And I just happened to see you walking outside, you know?
That makes sense, because I was,
you just
at that point, living just south of Bloor.
You were pretty fresh. You just moved in. It was summertime. It was early summertime. And I had moved back a few months ago, back in February. I came back to Toronto. So this must have been like
Yeah,
it was
I think
nice
I came
out.
back in April. So.
Yeah, so this was like April or maybe May, April,
maybe
May.
March.
Yeah.
It was probably like April 1st.
Yeah, so it was still pretty early, on since you arrived because it was sunny, but it was spring, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw you outside, walking past, and I just ran outside and say, "Hey, what's up, man?"
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, I was just like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in years, man. It's good to see you, bro."
And then we connected
online, exactly, just to see how you're doing and stuff like that.
Got it, yeah.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, then I was living at Rosie's then.
Yeah.
It's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, man, not the best place. The great location was great. We had some good times there.
Solid location.
There was a really amazing period of time when she was away because of an injury for a couple months.
Yeah, I feel sorry to say that,
recuperating. She was doing okay. She was being taken care of.
We came to visit her.
Yeah, we came to visit her, and then
at which point she told me she would have had me kicked out if I hadn't come to visit her.
Oh man, I remember that.
Yeah, it was great.
It was great.
I mean, needless to say,
yeah.
Very glad to be over that situation.
Yeah, man.
I was super happy to be back in Toronto. There were all sorts of things about that period that were rough and tumble, and we can get into later. But tell me, because so much of this has been about our lives and about where we've moved, and at this point we've finally got our reunion. I guess tell me sort of, we're trying to get from there to where we are now. We've been living together for the last 2 years.
Yeah, man.
Us and Jeanine, who's over in the corner working hard.
Yeah, working hard on some debriefs.
I guess, how do you feel like you got to this point? Because things seem to have gone
man.
quick.
Well, I think, I was living with my folks at that time when I moved back from New York, just because the city ate up all my money, so I didn't have any money, and I needed to get the hell out. So I just came back home, and they were okay with that. But, at a certain point, I wanted to leave, so I started working at Evergreen Brickworks late in September of the year I moved back, so that was September of 2018. So I started saving up money. And then, we had, I met Jeanine when I was working at Evergreen. I knew you, obviously, from before.
Of course.
And then, I had a steady job at that point. You didn't have the best job, but you were working. You were putting some money away because you knew you wanted to move.
Still dishwashing on a thing.
And you wanted to leave at Rosie's at some point. You really, So we started talking about, maybe we could live together.
Of course.
And then I had a conversation with Jeanine. As a little after we were talking, I said, Jeanine was like, I'm looking to move too.
She was also living with her mom.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's out or anything.
And so we all had we were just like, let's have a conversation about it. So in the spring and summer, I think the early summer of 2019, we met up as a group and hung out and just started to get to know each other a little bit, and then.
Yes, well, the first time I met Jeanine was, of course, at Kilgore's.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, man, that's right.
When the Raptors were playing the Bucks in the double OT game.
That's right.
I can't remember which game of the series. I think that's game number 3.
When it was make or break?
Yes, when the Canadian sweep starts, I think, is with that double OT
number 3,
there.
yeah, that's right.
Because the Raps go down the first 2 games and then take the third one in a double overtime. So that was a great game. And, it started Jeanine's love of basketball for life, I think. And,
absolutely.
And then it was later, and then you bought a bottle of wine and we went out and sat in the park, I remember. Exactly,
back when I was drinking. Yeah, and we watched all these people.
Just gotta remind you of that every now and then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was drinking a lot back then. Well, because we slammed a bunch of drinks at Kilgore's, because I used to like to get drunk and watch the Raptors, and if they win or lose, at least I was feeling okay in my head at that point. But I like to go to Kilgore's. Kilgore's is an old bar that's now gone forever. It was an old institution in the annex where we were both living.
But it's dead to the corona.
Yeah, dead to the corona. But, that was fun. And then we all went out afterwards and watched kids in Christie Pitch shoot fireworks at each other. So that was fun. So, that's the kind of context in which our Triune began to merge. And then we started to get serious and started looking for places because you were going away. You were going away.
I had a solid deadline. I was right. Because obviously it was a full month that I was going to be gone, visiting my mother and going to the UK.
Yes.
A full month that I was going to be out of there, and obviously it was miserable living with Rosie, and I want to be done with Rosie.
Totally done.
And then in a new place when I got back.
That's right.
And the Abelard trio held up. I moved in with you and Jeanine.
That's right.
We run around looking for places for at least a couple months, and eventually we found this place like 2 or 3 days before I had to go.
Yeah.
And I remember you guys were a little doubtful. I was just like, this is it. We're gonna cry. Oh God.
That's right. So we put together the lease agreement,
and it wasn't the best place of all worlds, but it's kept us alive for
the last year and a half or so. Yeah, man.
And hasn't totally bankrupted us, any of us yet.
Yes, that's right.
But
it was kind of like full circle for you because you're back home in your old neighborhood.
Back in my neighborhood, and of course the last piece of the puzzle, the Abelard trio to tie the story together, was Benjamin, who also helped me find Rosie.
Right,
which I'm so very thankful for.
That's right.
Even if it didn't work out there for all sorts of good reasons. He held all my stuff for that month.
For those 2 months.
I packed his garage, and the sitting room was just all my junk. So it was this remarkable collision of worlds. And somehow it all worked out.
I hadn't seen Ben in a long time.
No, totally. You guys started to reconnect a little bit.
Yeah.
He's very busy now. He's got a new place of his own.
Yes, that's right. Outside of the city.
It's remarkable just looking back at the timeline and seeing all these little chunks and how perfectly everything had to fall.
That's right. Absolutely.
So
there's a lot of moving pieces. But no, totally.
And you got out of your parents' place, and that was probably a good thing.
It's a good strain, and this was a great location for me because it's close. It was close to Evergreen, so I could.
At the time, it was an easy commute.
Yeah, and I was working there for 4 or 5 days a week, so it was good,
Totally. And then
Corona happened.
Then the pandemic hit.
Then the pandemic hit. Yeah, and I think. And then we've talked a bunch about that as well and how that impacted us in our Corona segment. Our Corona.
We have,
but going, yeah.
Yeah, I think this one so what have we done so far? We've covered our early lives, sort of our touches on, we've talked a lot about Toronto, about growing up. This is kind of our lives up until this point.
Yeah, up until this point. Yeah, exactly. In a nutshell.
Life in a nutshell. This one was a little more off the cuff than some of the previous ones.
Yeah, that's
less
okay.
Focused, but hopefully we still got a good dialogue going.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say at the end before we move on to the final question?
No, I'm ready for the final question if you are. Yeah.
So what do you see happening in the future, buddy?
Yeah, man. I want to see. Did I however many years in the future if you look back at these, I want to see, did I move out of Toronto? Did I go somewhere else? Did I move to a different Canadian city? Did I come back to Toronto? Just kind of see, did I move around or did I stay put? Yeah. Totally. Yeah. How about you, man?
Good idea. Yeah, no, I would, I like Toronto. I like being here. There's a couple other places I'm interested in being in Canada. I really find it hard to believe that I will ever enjoy a small town in Canada. They're simply too far away from the things that I value and require.
Totally.
Easy access to food, transport, and library would be pretty high on that list in case people are curious. I think I've been wanting to learn French, and hopefully in the next 2 months, I will do a bit of French learning.
Nice, man.
I think that's on the agenda.
Nice, man.
So that would make something like Montreal a much more viable option.
Yeah.
which is not massively cheaper than Toronto.
But it is cheaper.
But it is a bit cheaper.
It is a bit cheaper. And it's a nice city, too.
And it is a pretty nice city.
Yeah, man.
For now, I am in Toronto for the foreseeable future because of my, in part because of my grandmother.
Yeah.
Who is 93.
Yeah, wow.
Running low on marbles.
Yeah.
And just in general, sort of seems to be approaching the end of her life.
Totally.
So I would like to be here for that end.
Totally.
And then I think it will be time to move. I have been feeling like it would be nice to shift at some point.
Yeah, man.
I would like to maybe Montreal. At one point my plan was Montreal and then to end up in France, in Paris or something.
Yeah.
But obviously thanks to our previous episode,
yes,
with
Corona,
the UK fucking it all up.
Yes.
It's now much harder for me to get into Paris than it once was. But I still might go to the UK and then see if there's some way for me to hopscotch
man.
into Paris.
Absolutely, bro.
I think that'd be fun.
Nice, man. Well, that was a good episode. Yeah, man.
Thank you, buddy.
Absolutely.
It's hit the button there. Yeah, we can still do one on Canada. I think that was actually pretty good just to do a bunch of catching up.